Hello, children. Today we will do the story A Face in the Dark, written by Ruskin Bond. As we know, Ruskin Bond has given us different type of stories, among which the stories for children are amazing. A Face in the Dark is a horror story as well as it is an open-end story. Since it is an open-end story, you can comprehend its ending as per your wish. Let us begin the story. Mr. Oliver, an Anglo-Indian teacher, was returning to his school late one night on the outskirts of the hill station of Shimla. From being Kipling's time, the school had been run on the English public lines, and the boys, most of them from wealthy Indian families, wore blazers, caps, and ties. So, this is a story about Mr. Oliver, who has been the teacher of a school in Shimla. Every day in the evening, he used to go to the market and return by night. This school was a very famous school, and only the sons of the wealthy family could afford to go there. The school was known for not only for its education, but it was a mark of prestige. The students used to wear blazers, caps, and ties. Life magazine, in a feature on India, had once called it as the Eton of the East. Mr. Oliver had been teaching in the school for several years. The school was a very prestigious one. Life magazine had also given it an name as Eton of the East. And Mr. Oliver, he has been working in the school as a teacher for several years. The Shimla Bazaar, with its cinemas and restaurants, was about 3 miles from the school, and Mr. Oliver, a bachelor, usually strolled into the town in the evening, returning after dark, when he would take a shortcut through the pine forest. So Mr. Oliver, as he was a bachelor, he used to stroll around the market, which was around 3 miles, and by night he used to come back to his hostel in the school, and he used to take a shortcut through the pine forest. Now, Mr. Oliver was not a nervous type of person who would take a main road, rather, he used to take a shortcut through the pine forest. When there was a strong wind, the pine trees made a sad, airy sounds that kept most of the people to the main road. But Mr. Oliver, he was not a nervous or imaginative man. He carried a torch and its gleam. The batteries were running down. Now, one day what happened, when he was coming back, its torch was running down and moved fitfully down the narrow forest path. When its flickering light fell on the figure of a boy, suddenly what happened? Mr. Oliver saw a boy who was sitting alone on a rock. Mr. Oliver stopped. He knew boys were not supposed to be out after dark. "What are you doing out here, boy?" asked Mr. Oliver, rather very sharply, moving closer so that he could recognize the miscreant. But even as he approached the boy, Mr. Oliver sensed that something was wrong. The boy appeared to be crying. His head hung down. He held his face in his hands, and his body was shaking convulsively. It was a strange, soundless weeping, and Mr. Oliver felt distinctly uneasy. At first, Mr. Oliver, who was rather angry, now that anger has changed into concern. What was the boy doing over there at that point of night, and why was he crying? "Well, what's the matter, boy?" he asked, his anger giving way to concern. "What are you crying for?" Now the boy would not answer, neither he looked up, but his body continued to rack with sobbing. "Come on, boy, you shouldn't be out here at this hour. Tell me the trouble. Look up." The boy finally looked up. He took his hands from his face and looked up at his teacher. The light from Mr. Oliver's torch fell on the boy's face, if you could call it a face at all. It had no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth. It was just a round, smooth head with a school cap on top of it, and that's where the story ends. But for Mr. Oliver, it did not end here. The torch fell from his trembling hand. He turned and stumbled down the path, running blindly through the trees and calling for help. He was still running towards the school building when he saw a lantern swinging in the middle of the path. Thank God, Mr. Oliver thought, at least somebody was there as a savior. Mr. Oliver stumbled up to the watchman, gasping for breath. "What is it, Sahib? What is it?" asked the watchman. "Has there been any accident? Why are you running?" So the watchman even asked him what was happening. "What has happened? Was there any accident?" "I saw something very horrible. A boy whipping in the forest. And he had no face." "No face, Sahib? No eyes, no mouth, no nose, nothing." "Do you mean it was like this, Sahib?" asked the watchman and raised the lamp to his own face. The watchman too had no eyes, no ears, no features at all, not even an eyebrow. And that's when the wind blew the lamp out. Now, since this is an open-end story, we don't know what happened to Mr. Oliver. It's entirely upon you. How do you comprehend the ending? And it's your wish. Think it over and think over the varied answers of the ending. Thank you.